151. Archana Ji,
Shall
good
I
morning.
read?
Yes, please, Yasmin. As in the works of knowledge.
Good morning, Rangada.
Good morning, Archana Ji.
As in the works of knowledge, so in dealing with the workings of the heart, we are obliged to make a preliminary distinction between two categories of movements. Those that are either moved by the true soul or aim towards its liberation and rule in the nature, and those that are turned to the satisfaction of the unpurified vital nature. But the distinctions ordinarily laid down in this sense are of little use for the deeper spiritual purpose of yoga. Thus, a division can be made between religious emotions and mundane feelings, and it can be laid down as a rule of spiritual life that the religious emotions alone should be cultivated, and all worldly feelings and passions must be rejected and fall away from our existence. This, in practice, would mean the religious life of the saint or devotee, alone within the divine, or linked only to others in a common God love, or at the most pouring out the fountains of a sacred, religious, or pietistic love on the world outside. But religious emotions itself is too constantly invaded by the turmoil and obscurity of the vital movements, and it is often either crude or narrow, or fanatical, or mixed with movements that are not signs of the spirit's perfection. It is evident, besides, that even at the best, an intense figure of sainthood, clamped in rigid hierarchic lines, is quite other than the wide idea of an integral yoga. A larger psychic and emotional relation with God and the world, more deep and plastic in its essence, more wide and embracing in its meaning, more capable of taking up in its sweep the whole of life, is imperative.
Okay, so not a very big para, but very, very interesting, subtle distinctions are there. So we'll look at each thing as it. So he has finished with the ascent of sacrifice in the works of knowledge. That means the mental activities. Mental activities, as we have said already, are uh, research, philosophical discussions, okay? If you are a teacher or you are a coach or something in the mental field, okay? Or you are scientific, you are doing some research in science, okay? These are all works of knowledge. Now he is saying, we have discussed that already, and now we will come to the emotions of the heart, the bhakta. We have left the Jnana Yoga and now we are coming to the Bhakti Yoga. So, similarly, so in dealing with the working of the heart, we are obliged to make a preliminary distinction between two categories of movements. What are these two categories of movements? One which is related to your effort to improve yourself, okay? And the other is the very practical feelings. Like for instance, if you are praying to the divine or whatever is your Ishta Devata, okay, that is a emotional, that is one category. And the other category is I have to go to the market and purchase vegetables today, or I have to go and buy some food items. Okay, that is a mundane. So he is making a distinction. He says there are two types of activities. Then he will tell you that in the integral yoga we don't make this distinction between the two. Okay, so that's what he is going to tell you. So let's see what he's saying. Okay, so he's saying those that are either moved by the true soul or aid towards its liberation and the rule in the nature, and those that are turned to the satisfaction of an unpurified vital nature. So unpurified vital nature, you can say, is equal to ego. So any activity which is egoistic is unpurified vital nature. But those which are related to the true soul or aid, even such a simple thing as prayer, okay, or you are trying to analyze yourself and see where you have gone wrong. Okay, you admit to yourself that these defects are there. These are all the one type of activity. Yogic activities, if you want to use a flexible word. Or the other is very, very practical things. Okay, as I said, I have to go to this any activity which is directed outwards. Okay, external work. Okay, so that is the unpurified vital nature. When you are even such a simple thing as I have to go to the market and buy vegetables, it is there is an element of ego even there. It doesn't sound like that, but it is there. Unpurified vital nature. Okay, so but the distinctions ordinarily laid down in this sense, in the sense of religious and non-religious. Okay, he has used the words profane and secular, secular and profane, and sacred. He has used those words elsewhere. No? So that which is sacred is related to the divine, and that which is profane or secular is not religious. It is everything which is not connected with the divine or an inner nature. So, but the distinctions ordinarily laid down in this sense are of little use for the deeper spiritual purpose of yoga. And the deeper spiritual purpose of yoga is integral yoga. So, what is he saying? He is saying that even when you go to the market to buy a soap, it can become part of your spiritual life. Okay, you can make a prayer. You say, okay, make my work easier, or you are keeping the divine always. Let my work be fulfilled properly. But you be with me. Okay, then you are making even the worldly activities. You are making it part of your spiritual life. So, thus, a division can be made between religious emotions and mundane feelings. Mundane of the earth, like the French word monde. So, mundane, earthly, relating to the earth, physical, practical. And the other one is the religious emotions. It can be laid down as a rule of spiritual life that the religious emotions alone should be cultivated, and all worldly feelings and passions must be rejected and fall away from our existence. This is a normal feeling of the man who is not yet leading a spiritual life, but he is very religious. Okay, that's what he is doing. He goes to the temple, he prays, but still there is a lot of ego in him, and he makes this distinction. I should make a distinction between religious works and the mundane works. This was simply saying normally this is done. This in practice would mean, okay, okay. This in practice would mean the religious life of the saint or the devotee. This is what it amounts to. Alone within the divine, with the divine, or linked only to others in a common God love. Okay, so here the those who are your co-sadhaks. Okay, that's what it means by only linked only to the others in a common God love. Okay. Those who are your companions in the spiritual life, most linked only to others in a common God love, or at the most pouring out the fountains of a sacred, religious, and pietistic love on the world outside. Pietistic, piety, Piety, is a respect for elders and parents. That's what is it. That's very big thing in normal social life. You must respect your elders and you must love and serve your parents. Okay. In the spiritual world, that takes on a little bit of it gets diluted because piety is really a moralistic. But in the spiritual life, even your parents are only human beings who are connected with you physically, vitally, emotionally, and family ties. But your whole stress is on the divine. I'll tell you a very interesting thing about Raman Maharshi, because this you have to understand. Everybody will say, of course you have to love your parents and you have to serve your parents. Okay? And that's correct at the lower level. At level 1, it is absolutely valid. But at level 2 and level 3, it need not be. They are just human beings, happen to be connected with you. Okay? So let me tell you a very interesting story about about Raman Maharshi. Raman Maharshi, when he ran away from home, he did not tell anybody. He just left a note saying, I have gone to look for my father. Please don't look for me. And he took that little money which was given to him for his college fees, and he took the train and came to Tiruvannamalai. After a lot of wrong journeys here and there, he came to Villupuram and finally landed up in Tiruvannamalai. And nobody knew about him. He was a young boy of 16. He threw away all his clothes and he sat in the temple there. There's a small underground sort of depression in the temple, and he used to sit there. I've gone and seen that place. And he used to meditate there day and night. And when he was hungry, he used to come out and beg for food. Nobody knew about him. But after some time, his fame started spreading. Here is a young boy who is constantly meditating and constantly, absolutely not bothered about anything in the world. So his fame started spreading. Okay, name without any effort on his part. Then, after many years, his mother came to know, oh, my child who has disappeared is there in Tiruvannamalai. So she went there, okay? And actually she's a mother and she's claiming that he is my son. And she was showing sense of egoistic possession. This is my son and he has become like this, okay? But Raman Maharshi was absolutely indifferent to her. Those who are watching, and they used to wonder, why is he doing this? Why is he so indifferent to her? She's showering her love, but that love is egoistic. Huh? So she is showering her love on him, but he is remaining absolutely impassive. He is not even reacting. What is this? But they did not know that he loves her really deeply, but it's not an ordinary emotional feeling. There is a big difference between just surface emotion and a deep emotion inside. And he was completely not bothering about her at all. And people used to sometimes say he's even rude to her. Okay, I'm just mentioning this because of that piety. So when they use the word piety, I'm explaining what that means. Piety is usually respect and honor your elders and your gurus, those who are elders and your parents. That's what piety means. So this is, but later on, okay, when she fell ill, he was constantly sitting by her, and he even, towards the end of her life, he gave her liberation. And that's a very interesting story, but I won't go into that. How can a spiritual man give liberation to someone who is imperfect? That's another story altogether, and we have to go into deep discussion on that. So we won't go into that. But Srimad is using the word piety, and that's why and he's using it with religious, okay? So love outside. So this is religious and pietistic love on the world outside. But religious emotion itself is too constantly invaded by the turmoil and obscurity of the vital movements, and it is often either crude or narrow or fanatical or mixed with movements that are not signs of the spirit's perfection. So, when can your religious emotion be imperfect? It is always imperfect in the beginning. Because suppose even if I am praying, what are you praying for? Ma, let me win that 100-meter race today. Okay, it's easy. You are praying to the divine, but it is egoistic. It is impure. Okay, if you make it that, let me do my best and offer what I'm going to do to you, that is, the impurity is much reduced. Okay, so he's saying religious emotion itself is too constantly invaded by the turmoil and obscurity of the vital movements, and it is often either crude or narrow or fanatical or mixed with movement. Fanatical, we have a wonderful example of this jihad which is taking place all over the world. I am fighting for God, and those who don't believe in my God, they deserve to be eliminated from the world. This is their feeling. Okay, so it is so crude and fanatical. So here also you can see he has used three words. First of all, it can be crude. Okay, it can be crude without being cruel. Then narrow, you are thinking only of one thing. Okay, then fanatical, it becomes absolutely a falsehood. Okay, so Three movements, he has used three words. Each one slightly different. There is a gradation always in his prose. Okay? Or mixed with movements that are not signs of the spirit's perfection. So it can be for, you can be praying for your egoistic aims. So then it is mixed with movements which are not signs of the spirit's perfection. It is evident besides that even at the best, an intense figure of sainthood clamped in rigid hieratic lines is quite other than the wide ideal of an integral yoga. So, first of all, intense figure of sainthood, clamped. Look at the word he is using, limited, okay, rigid, fixed, clamped in rigid hieratic lines. Hieratic lines means relating to priestly activities. Rigid hieratic lines, okay, is quite other than the wide ideal of an integral yoga. You have to include everything and not only your religious feelings. Even if you are a saint, okay, you are concentrating maybe only on your Ishtadevata. So it is clamped. You have to go even beyond that. Okay. A large psychic and emotional relation with God and the world. Okay, you have to include the world also. Then it doesn't become narrow. A large psychic and emotional relation with God and the world, more deep and plastic in its essence, not narrow in its essence, more wide and embracing in its movements, more capable of taking up in its sweep the whole of life is imperative. Look at the word sweep. It's not concentrated. It is covering a huge area. Okay, the sweep of whole of life is imperative. So if you give proper value to all the words he is using, they themselves explains his whole attitude. The word sweep is so interesting here. Okay, it's not concentrated only in one. You are not cleaning only one corner. You are sweeping the whole room. Okay, so it is the whole of life. That is imperative. It is absolutely essential if you want an integral yoga. That's what he's saying. So beautiful. He has expressed how there can be religious feelings and there can be non-religious feelings. But the non-religious feelings can also be made part of your spiritual life by associating the divine with you. Okay, and not making even the spiritual motives. Okay? Even when you are seeking liberation, there is selfishness in it. So there's a, it's a, but there's no, you can't do anything about it. In the beginning, it is bound to be like that. It's a gradation. Slowly, 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 it goes towards perfection. You should not feel discouraged when it is. In the beginning, you notice in yourself impure movements, you must not be discouraged because that's the nature of the world. So slowly, slowly, as if you are looking at a machine, set it right. When a machine breaks down, you don't start howling and shouting and saying, oh my God, my machine is not working. No, many people do, but that's the wrong movement. You take it to a mechanic and get it repaired. Exactly the same way, all your imperfections also, look at them very, very calmly, quietly, without being disturbed, and ask for help to repair them. Normally, when we see something wrong in ourselves, there is a sense of guilt. Okay? But it's very interesting. You should have no sense of guilt at all. You should be very, very clear that the imperfections that are there are part of nature. I don't need to feel guilty. That is the reality. That's the reality of the world. But I have to set it right. You have to recognize the imperfection, but not feel guilty about it. That's the important part. So we can go now to the next one. A wider formula has been provided. So even there's a distinction. The secular mind, so he's going to talk about the secular mind. Jasmine read it. So now next, one of you read. Shilpa, good morning. I did not wish you good morning.
Yeah. Shall I
So,
read?
yeah, Tarika, read. Okay. A wider formula.
A wider formula has been provided by the secular mind of man.
Make
Of
a
which
change.
the basis is there is some disturbance. No, I don't
Yeah.
know. Can you
Now,
hear me
yes,
clearly?
I can hear you very clearly. I don't know if the others can.
Okay. A wider formula has been provided by the secular mind of man, of which the basis is the ethical sense. For it distinguishes between the emotions sanctioned by the ethical sense and those that are egoistic and selfishly common and mundane. It is the works of altruism, philanthropy, compassion, benevolence, humanitarianism, service, labor, labor for the well being of man and all creatures that are to be our ideal. To shuffle off the coil of egoism and grow into a soul of self abnegation that lives only or mainly for others or for humanity as a whole is the way of man's inner evolution according to this doctrine. Or if this is too secular and mental to satisfy the whole of our being, since there is a deeper religious and spiritual note there that is left out of account by the humanitarian formula, a religio-ethical foundation can be provided for it, and such was indeed its original basis. To the inner worship of the divine or the supreme by the devotion of the heart, or to the pursuit of the ineffable by the seeking of a highest knowledge, can be added as a worship through altruistic works or a preparation through acts of love, of benevolence, of service to mankind or to those around us. It is indeed by the religio-ethical sense that the law of universal goodwill or universal compassion or of love and service to the neighbor, the Vedantic, the Buddhistic, the Christian ideal was created. Only by a sort of secular refrigeration, extinguishing the fervor of the religious element in it, could the humanitarian ideal disengage itself and become the highest plane of a secular system of mental and moral ethics. For in the religious system, this law of works is a means that ceases when its object is accomplished, or a side, a means that ceases when its object is accomplished, or a side issue. It is
Yes.
a part of the cult by which one adores and seeks the divinity, or it is a penultimate step of the excision of self in the passage to nirvana. In the secular ideal, it is promoted into an object in itself. It becomes a sign of the moral perfection of the human being, or else it is a condition for a happier state of man on earth, a better society, a more united life of the race. But none of these things satisfy the demand of the soul that is placed before us by the integral yoga.
Yeah. Now, this is a very interesting paragraph because earlier he has told us that there are two types of religious works and mundane works. Now, later on, he has told you that it is not necessary to separate mundane works from religious works. They all, you can, even your mundane works like going and buying things in the market can be made part of your spiritual life by remembering the divine and offering your what you are doing. So it can be made. But in other words, your religious feelings are turned outwards. But there also there is a gradation. That's what he's saying. And he's discussing altruism, service to mankind, philanthropy, compassion, and social works. Social works, I have added the word, but that is what he is discussing in this paragraph. It's a very interesting one, and we'll have a quiet look at it. Okay. A wider formula has been provided by the secular mind of man, of which the basis is the ethical sense. So, secular, non-religious. That's the definition of the word secular. Okay. In India, it makes no sense at all, but it was a very, very important step in Europe because at that time, in the 1400s, 1500s, when the Renaissance was just coming up, okay, the church before that was dictating terms in life, okay. A king can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, everything. The church was dictating terms to the common population, and it was also being very, very authoritative and very wrong also. So when the scientific spirit started rising, and the main thing was started with that Galileo and Tycho Brahe and others, they realized that the church is always telling us so many things which are not true. Okay, so they decided to, the movement started that the church must be put in its place and it should not interfere in science and other pursuits. So secular, the word secularism came up then. Religion should not interfere in the normal activities of physical world. This is the thing that came about in Europe, and even today, after 500 years, they go with this formula that religion has no place at all in government or even in life. Okay, completely. Science and spirituality or science and religion must be absolutely separate. They should not mix, which is absolutely wrong in India. Every activity in India is percolated and permeated by the religious spirit. You enter into a house, it's a religious function. You have a newborn child, there is a religious function. The child is first food he is having, there is a religious function. The first time when he starts his education, there is a religious function. When you are about to die also, it is associated with religion. We know that. For instance, in Jainism, when you become old and you are preparing for your death, it becomes a religious feeling. Okay, they starve themselves. So everything is related with religion. Okay, so it's absolutely wrong. The idea today, most of the intellectuals in India are Western educated intellectuals. They believe in secularism. Okay, not dharma. It should be the constitution. This is a big debate going on in India now. Okay, we will go by our constitution and not by dharma. Whereas now the whole shift is Indian idea of Sanatana Dharma. That's what we have to go by. So Sridhar is discussing this. Very interesting. We'll see what he's saying. Now, with that little introduction to secular, I'm going to read each sentence. A wider formula, okay, not this division between religious and non-religious. It should be wider. The wider formula has been provided by the secular mind of man. Okay? The whole movement started in Europe, of which the basis is the ethical sense, morality. Okay, it is your duty to help those who are weak and those who are suffering. You must help them. But this has nothing to do with spiritual life. Okay, but it is very noble. That's why Sridhar is saying it's a gradation. So he is going step by step and showing you all the gradations. Okay. So for it distinguishes between the emotions sanctioned by the ethical sense, morality, and those that are egoistic and selfishly common and mundane. Okay. When I am doing an activity for myself, it is egoistic and selfishly common. But when I decide that I am going to help the poor people, when there is a flood and I have to go and help those people, it is not selfish in a certain sense. It is selfish in another sense, and that we will see what he means. But it is not selfish. I am not doing this for others. I am not doing this for myself. I am doing it for others. So emotions sanctioned by the ethical sense, morality, and those that are egoistic and selfishly common and mundane. So he is discussing humanitarianism, philanthropy, altruism, compassion, benevolence. This is what he's used so many words: altruism, philanthropy, compassion, benevolence, humanitarian. Slight differences are there in each one, but we will not go into that right now, because compassion need not be philanthropy. Okay? Philanthropy is I am helping the poor, I am giving food to the beggars. Okay, I am rescuing a street dog. Okay, that is philanthropy. Compassion need not express itself through physical actions. Benevolence, goodwill towards all. Humanitarianism, service, labor for the well-being of man and all creatures. Now note that. That's why I included also street dogs. Okay, there's everywhere there's I think they call it the rescue team. The other day I was coming from ashram and I saw 2-3 small puppies on the footpath. They leave them now. And one small boy came and told me, we have just called the rescue team and they will come and take these puppies away. So this is humanitarianism. Service, labor for the well-being of man and all creatures. Okay. Note that have to be our ideal. So this is the humanitarian idealism. I'll tell you that there is a girl who came from California, because there's an institute there done by Haridas Chaudhary, California Institute of Integral Studies. Okay. And she came and she said that my Christian ideal, I want to serve everybody else. When I told her that may not be really a spiritual activity, she said, no, that I'm going to do in any case. So this is what Srimati is discussing. Philanthropy, compassion, benevolence, humanitarianism, service, labor for the well-being of man and all creatures, that are to be our ideal. To shuffle off the coil of egoism and grow into a soul of self-abnegation. I deny myself certain comforts and I give to others. Okay. Actually, ideally, communism also, this is the ideal, that you have to help everybody else. But communistic ideas again turn absolutely in the wrong direction. So, self-abnegation, deny yourself certain facilities and comforts that you were indulging in, that lives only or mainly for others or for humanity as a whole, is the way of man's inner evolution according to this doctrine. The doctrine of humanitarianism is do things for others and not for yourself. This need not be at all a spiritual activity. Or if this is too secular and mental to satisfy the whole of our being, okay, since there's a deeper religious and spiritual note there that is left out of account by the humanitarian formula, a religio-ethical foundation can be provided for it. So even humanitarianism can become slightly religious and even spiritual. Okay, to the inner worship of the divine or the supreme by the devotion of the heart, or to the pursuit of the ineffable by the seeking of a highest knowledge, can be added a worship through altruistic works or a preparation through acts of love, of benevolence, of service to mankind or to those around us. So what Srimati is saying is very interesting. He is saying that humanitarianism and philanthropy, altruism need not be spiritual. At the same time, it can be. You can make it. That's what he's saying. If you associate the divine with that activity, then it can become part of your spiritual life. That's exactly what he's saying. Okay. That is the reason why the Vedantic, the Buddhistic, and the Christian ideal of service to others, of helping others. Okay. I'll mention two things in the physical world which happened. Okay. There was in America, okay, it started. I've forgotten the exact word, but they wanted to help others and they had a lot of extra wheat and all that. So they were giving free to many countries where there was hunger and famine. Okay, so that is one thing. Then even today, I think in France, there's an organization called Médecins Sans Frontières. In other words, doctors, or rather medicine without boundaries. So wherever there's an epidemic or something in Africa or in Asia, these people go and give free service. It's a organization which the government supports, or sometimes even rich people can support. So this is what Srimati is discussing here. It can be made part of the spiritual life, need not be also part of the spiritual life. I'm just helping that beggar in the road. It has nothing to do with God. It's just moral. It's very, very simple. That he is suffering, so I have to relieve his suffering. Nothing to do with God or spirituality. It's limited only to the moral idea. That's what Srimati is saying. Okay, but it can also be part of the spiritual life. Okay. Now, next is very interesting. Only by a sort of secular refrigeration, extinguishing the favor of the religious element in it, could the humanitarian ideal disengage itself and become the highest plane of a secular system of mental and moral ethics. Now, Very interesting word, secular refrigeration. What does it mean? So, when I am giving food to a beggar, I can do it simply because of my feeling that it is something good I am doing. I am not doing something selfish, I am giving it. But there is no question of God or anything in it. Number one. Number two, as in Europe, you can't mix religion with your normal activities. Therefore, eliminate God altogether. Okay? So, that is what Sylvia is saying by secular refrigeration. To refrigeration is to make something cold. So when your love of God is there, even when I am giving food to a beggar or a dog, okay, I am thinking that I am associating love with it and emotion with it. Okay, but you can do it without the emotion and the love. Okay, you just do it as a duty. It has to be done. So that is secular refrigeration to make the heat cool. Interesting word is using. Huh? See how it means. How Sendra is using words. It's fantastic. Secular refrigeration. I am giving. I am feeding a poor dog in the street. Okay, and I am associating. I am thinking, my God, see this poor creature. I don't know why God has done this, but I am giving him. There should be, and you even make a small prayer that God, why don't you help this? So you are associating the divine with this. But in the West, as I said, all activities in the physical world should not be. God should not be brought into all this. God doesn't even exist. Why do you want to bring in? So you refrigerate your religious emotion, make it cool, make it disappear. No God. When I am helping a beggar in the street, there is no question of God or anything. So that's what he means by secular refrigeration, extinguishing the fire that was burning your hot love for everything, that you extinguish. Okay. Extinguishing the fervor of the religious element in it could be the humanitarian ideal disengage itself and become the highest plane of a secular system of mental and moral ethics. Morality. Okay. Morality can be absolutely nothing to do with spiritual life, but it can also become, it can be the springboard. Morality can certainly be the springboard from which you go into a spiritual life. Okay. But it need not be. See how interestingly these gradations Sridhar is bringing out. For in the religious system, this law of works is a means that ceases when its object is accomplished or a side issue. Now this is very interesting. He is explaining the difference between humanitarian and spiritual. When you are doing it only as a secular system, as a moral duty, you have fed the beggar or the dog and finished. You are not thinking anymore of the divine. There is no question of divine. But if it's spiritual, your idea of the divine will continue even after you have done that. Okay? So that's what he's saying. It finishes. You see a beggar in the street and you give him food. Finish. After that, gone. That's finished. The work is that ceases when its object is accomplished. Or a side issue. Okay? It can be a side issue. It is part of the cult by which one adores and seeks the divinity, or it's a penultimate step in the excision of self in the passage to nirvana. He's saying this because the Buddhistic solution, okay, there are two movements in Buddhism, Mahayana and Hinayana. Okay, Mahayana is the one that has compassion for mankind, and you help mankind. So it's split into two. So that's why he's bringing in. It can be morality can lead you to the spiritual life, and it can be a passage to the nirvana. Okay. So there's a mixture. Huh? You can't say that religious life is absolutely divorced from spirituality. You can't say that because it can go. There is a very thin line, and that line is not a very clear line between religious life and spiritual life. You can't separate the two absolutely. There's a gradation and there's a mixing of the two for the religious systems. In the secular ideal, it is promoted as an object in itself. In the secular ideal, humanitarianism, altruism, philanthropy, you don't need to think of God. Okay? It is promoted in an object in itself. By itself, it is sufficient. I'm being moral, fine, wonderful. It becomes a sign of the moral perfection of the human being, or else it's a condition for a happier state of man upon earth, a better society, a more united life of the race. You are helping mankind. You are also happy, and mankind also is slightly more happy than before. But none of these things satisfy the demand of the soul that is placed before us by the integral yoga. Simply saying it's not wrong to be humanitarianism, but when you go to the integral yoga, only the divine matters. The rest of it is all you leave to God. Why is that dog suffering? Why is that beggar suffering? Don't worry about it. God will take care of it. Okay. So, but you are not doing this out of rejection or a looking down upon. You are doing it as that doesn't concern me directly. Okay. I might as well mention that's one of the reasons why charity was not one of the ideals in the ashram. Okay. Charity was not resorted to. Many people ask me. I had gone once to some government office and they told me, why doesn't the ashram open dispensary and do social work? Okay, but that's exactly that. There's a big difference between the two. That's the reason. But none of these things satisfy the demand of the soul that is placed before us by a integral yoga. So, 30. We've got 3 minutes. So we did 2 paragraphs, and the second paragraph is very interesting. There is a gradation. So there is not disapproving of humanitarianism and altruism and philanthropy. But usually when you do that, there is an element of egoism in it. No? That's what he will discuss in the next paragraph. So we've got only 3 minutes left, and we can leave this for, how big is the para? It's quite big. So we'll leave this for next time. But he is telling you why philanthropy and altruism need not necessarily be a spiritual pursuit, because there is ego in it. When I am helping somebody, I am taking satisfaction, egoistic satisfaction. Look, I have done some very good work. Okay, I am better than the others. Others are selfish, but I am not selfish. So that is the ego. And ego is the enemy of spiritual life. Therefore, it is not. That's what he is saying. Okay? So, shall we stop here today? It's a very interesting discussion, and we should not have absolutely rigid ideas. But he is giving you a very clear picture of the whole thing. Between absolute mundane works and mundane works which are related to spirituality or religion, and again you come to pure spiritual life, and there is a mixture between the two. Okay, so we stop here today. So,
Merci.
okay, au revoir.